Hello, everybody. I am just setting up to go live right now. I'm a little early, so we can maybe talk. Whoever shows up early, they can ask questions, say hello, and then I will go live at around 8:30 with a discussion of, I guess, today's readings. And let me just pull this up. Let's see. A lot of crazy stuff going on in the world. How are you, Jules? Okay. Is everybody reading along with this? Are we just kind of going along with what I bring up from the readings? 9 of 365. Going live now. Okay. So, let me see. Does anybody have any opinion on Trump's speech yesterday? We can just talk about that for a second while we're about to go live in 4 minutes. Anyone? Or is that something that nobody wants to talk about? Yeah, so obviously, I don't know. I'm hearing a bunch of different messages. I'll briefly hit on this because we have about 3-4 minutes. With regards to President Trump, everybody knows what I think of the president. I think I'm not alone. There's 100 million Americans that love President Trump. He was the greatest president we've had in this country's history. As far as I'm concerned, he's accomplished the most. But unfortunately, it seems as though he's surrounded himself with some people that were not very trustworthy, that got into his inner circle and gave him some really bum advice when he came into the final stretch, which is very sad and disappointing. And I know there's talk that he is going to help remake the GOP, but if he couldn't help remake it as the POTUS, it's going to be tougher outside of that. So, James, I have looked into Nassar Jassara, and I actually did something on that. If you look on my YouTube page, but look, I'm going to talk about something on Wednesday. It happens to be the 3rd, and I don't think I'll be live, but I'll be on Michael Adams' show of Natural News. Natural Planet. Hold on a second. I know I get them mixed up because they sound similar. I think it's hold on a second. Gotta make sure I get it right. My bad. He's gonna be very upset with me. Natural News. Yes, Natural News. I don't know why I think of Natural Planet. Maybe that was a different magazine I was thinking of. But he's phenomenal. If anybody who hasn't watched him interview people, he's an exceptional mind. He's definitely worth having a listen to. And so I'll be interviewed by him on Wednesday, and then I'm gonna see if I can get a hold of Jim Hoft in the afternoon to kind of share some thoughts that I have about a dream that I had on Saturday, and we'll kind of see what happens with it. I have, as you guys know, I'm a big believer in just kind of letting things go as the way they're meant to play out. I think I've learned that philosophy over time in the financial markets, that you want to try to not force where the wind is going, or the waves, so to speak, or the water in the markets, that things are very fluid. The information changes, the money changes, everything kind of fluctuates. And if you try to force anything, it can literally just capsize you or take down your whole strategy, portfolio, whatever, you name it. You can't fight the market. The collective wisdom and the behavior of all the human beings involved are very much akin to how things play out in the Bible. Like, whereas there's different groups of people, different classes of investors, there's different things that work and don't work at times. There's stories of, victories, stories of massive defeats. And there's all these different metaphors that surround us, and not just in the financial markets, but in different industries, different parts of, I guess, the political spectrum, and so forth. So, with that being said, it's 8:30, so let's get started. And this is Genesis 20, and this was pretty interesting because Abraham, he moved to Negev and lived there for a while between Kadesh and Shur. I wish someone would just kind of like maybe I'll do it, is like take all these distances between all these different cities and nations in the Middle East and kind of give us a perspective from the U.S. map. I'd just like to know the distance between all these things. And I don't pull out a map to look at these old cities, but but when he went there, he gave the king of Gerar, his wife, and basically said it was his sister. And for the life of me, I'm not so sure why he would do that. I know he was like testing him, and then he was trying to help destroy that kingdom. I'm at a little bit of a loss as to the significance of this, and I don't remember it going back. But him going there thinking it's a godless place and that they're gonna want his wife and then kill him to get her. It's pretty bizarre to me. I would love if somebody has any opinion on this to just type it here and I could talk about it, because it's just weird that Abraham would mislead a king by saying his wife was his sister, and then and then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife, and his female servant, so they can have children. So, for the Lord had caused all the women to be infertile because of what happened to Abraham's wife Sarah. So it's like God sided with Abraham for Abraham doing something that was extremely deceptive. I'm not exactly sure what to make of that. So I'm just going to kind of move on to the next section. If you guys think of you can tell me what the lesson is there. I don't really know what it is, other than God. If God has your back, regardless if you're doing bad things, he's going to continue to have your back. It just seems a little bizarre to me. But the Lord kept his word and did for Sarah exactly what he promised, that she became pregnant with Isaac, when Abraham was 100 years old. And then, Hagar and Ishmael are sent away. As you know, Ishmael, I think, was the obviously there's a lot of tension later in the Bible with regards to Ishmael being the throwaway child, so to speak, of Abraham. And so once again, this is something where maybe I just need to try to talk to somebody who's gone through a little more education on this stuff. But Abraham's covenant with Abimelech, God is obviously with you and everything, helping you and everything that you do. Swear to me, God's name, that you will never deceive me, my children, or any of my descendants. I have been loyal to you, so now swear that you will be loyal to me and to this country that you are living as a foreigner. And then Abraham swears that he does. So I don't know if it was to form an alliance that, God wanted to be sure that Abraham's descendants would have a place or a new nation state to do this, and that the only way to get that was through deception. So, maybe that's what it was, that this was a way for Abraham to move up the social status sphere of this country, and then have a place where him and his descendants were always protected. But it just seems like a pretty conniving way to do it. And so that's what Jim is saying, that Abraham had a moment of fear of man and briefly forgot about God's power, just as we do. You know? And then James says, wow, the parallels are crazy to modern times. Well, that's one of the beauties about all these stories in the Bible, is that they kind of capture the way we seem to behave in cycles through time. And that's some of the brilliance of it. And it makes sense that maybe if all of us are kind of showing up here on this planet at various times, and that maybe it's a testing ground to see if we have what it takes to I guess move on to the next stage. You know, it kind of reminds me of that movie Defending Your Life, I think, with Albert Brooks. Like, you know, where your life is put on trial and you got a big TV going. You have to explain some of the things that you did right and some of the things you did wrong, and where you get to go next in the universe. And you know, it's a pretty creative little movie, and you can't help but think that some of these parallels, you know, definitely tie out pretty nicely to what's going on in the world, and repeatedly. It's not just like a one-off type of thing, but it seems to happen quite a bit. Maybe that's why the Bible is so relatable to everybody, and that's why I happen to think it's the greatest book ever written. Because you know, it's pretty tough to top anything that God does, right? What we do individually is a reflection of God, and it's God's talent flowing through us. So it makes sense that God's word and lessons would pretty much be the top of the heap. So then, you know, this is where God tells Abraham to take Isaac to sacrifice him, and then, you know, and then basically he's about to kill him, and then, you know, God tests Abraham, and Abraham's about to kill his son, and then sure enough, God has him stop at the last minute. And basically, you know, God has seen that Abraham is truly loyal to God's will. So maybe thinking of that story about him being willing to sacrifice his son, and then being, you know, I guess in a sense, I hate to say it, pimping out his wife to secure lands for his future generations. You know, maybe those two things are tied together, that you'll do whatever it takes, which is pretty much tied to politics, right? I mean, if you think about the political system that we're in, and some of these people that, you know, scratch and claw and do evil things to obtain power, it's pretty wild that some of these stories that play out, because I don't think they're, you know, some people think it's figurative. I think that these stories are literal. I think that this did happen. And so for it to happen this way is pretty wild indeed. And so I don't know, any of you out there with kids, I mean, you know, children, how would you really know and test your faith if something like that happened, where God wanted to see how loyal you were to God, and that we're here in a temporary body, and that we put to that sort of test, right? It's something that you would think would be done by people that are Satanists, and not so much, you know, our God. So, you know, that's one that I got to think about some more. I mean, I understand that it happened, and I understand that it was a test, but it sure is pretty wild indeed. So now we go, after those three parts of Genesis, you know, we go to Matthew 7, which is pretty interesting, because, you know, it says, do not judge others and you will not be judged, right? We've all heard this. Nobody likes to be judged. And I think we kind of hit on that the other day. So some of this is, I think they kind of overlap. So let me see here. Let me see, Matthew. So effective prayer, we've talked about that. The golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I think everybody can agree with that concept. Nobody wants to, nobody wants bad things to happen to them, but then sometimes we don't take the time to empathize with what we might be doing that might be bad to somebody else. And it could be very subtle. It could just be like forgetting to acknowledge somebody when you go into a room. It could be, forgetting to say goodbye when you leave a party. And, there was somebody there that was anticipating you being there and had their feelings hurt because you didn't say goodbye on your way out the door. That's another way of do unto others as you'd want done unto you. It doesn't necessarily have to be anything mean per se, but just the same acts of kindness that you're looking for, right? We all kind of want to feel that connection. And so I think that's an important thing to consider too. It doesn't always have to be negative. It's the acts of kindness that we're missing as well that make us feel connected to other people and make us feel like we're part of a larger community. That sometimes is more overlooked than not saying something that's bad, right? But obviously feeling ostracized is a very powerful weapon. And we see it firsthand with this cancel culture we live in. The media has attempted to ostracize anybody who speaks up, speaks the truth, because I'm sure it's painful to a lot of people. And you have to have thick skin and you have to have a strong support system and support network to deal with that type of barrage. So it says, beware of false prophets who are disguised as harmless sheep, but are really vicious wolves. We've seen a lot of that in the past 20 years. I can think of probably, I don't know, I would imagine 60-70% of the politicians that have held office in the United States that go around talking about God, but then don't publicly are publicly wary about speaking about God, right? And this is a good segue into how I've been feeling. I had this conversation with my wife today, and about my faith. And I have an incredibly strong faith and belief in God, and I have zero doubt that God exists. And my existence is definitely tied to that strong faith and belief. And even with all that, growing up in a strong religious faith my whole life, I hate to say it, but it's like I was that kid that refused to not go to church, even if it was sick, right? I had to go because I didn't want to let God down. Like when I was growing up. And reason why I point that out is until I started doing this, just discussing the Bible, some of the lessons, some of my interpretations over time, it was extremely uncomfortable, and I kind of looked at it and I thought about it. It's like, why am I uncomfortable talking about my faith? If I strongly believe in my faith, I'm very comfortable in my career. I've been doing my career my whole life. I know my material. I know I study it. I don't just, speak off the top of my head, and I've studied this material, maybe not as thoroughly. I'll admit that. Maybe not as critically. I've never really critically looked at it. I've always accepted it and just kind of moved on. So it's kind of like, I would argue, it's probably more of like listening to the stories, but not really delving into the meaning as much as I could have over the years. And I think that's part of what's changed, is I want to actually better understand the meaning behind all these stories. And as I was kind of doing that, I was like, we live in a culture and a planet right now where you're vilified if you speak your faith. You're looked upon as though something's wrong with you by these evil people that are kind of calling things across not just the United States but across the globe, and they do an incredible job of breaking down your desire to spread the good word, right? Because we should be spreading the word and through, not just through words, but through deeds and through actions, and teaching people to look to the guidepost in the book that has helped civilizations for thousands of years succeed. And if this is the last stand. If they take down the importance and the significance and all the lessons of the Bible, and they try to destroy it, like rewrite the Bible to make it something that it never was, that's something that I think is in the works. I think they're trying to do that. And one of the ways in which you can do that is if you get people to stop discussing it. And so, I've given this a lot of thought, because in the past 12 months, and part of this will be discussed on Wednesday as to why I want to move forward with something and see where it ends up going. But one of the things that's extremely disturbing is, we've spent thousands of years, right? With organized religion of some sort. And right now I'm talking about the Catholic Church because I happen to be a Roman Catholic. And they've received just untold amounts of money from every nation on the earth. And there's 1.6 billion Catholics. So they've received all this money in tribute to solve problems. And then the priests and bishops on U.S. soil, they live in these estates like they're lords of like medieval times, and like England when you watch these old time movies. Now they live in these estates here. And I couldn't help but think that, I never really thought about it, never really had a problem that they lived like this and they were doing all this stuff with the money. But when the shit hit the fan last year, they failed us in a huge way. Nobody spoke up. None of these, none of them went to bat in a major way. Why? Because they're worried about losing their tax deferred status. So it's like, wait, let me get this straight. You're worried about your tax status instead of speaking the truth that you've been preaching to us this whole time. And so it was a big wake-up call. And I think that's why, hopefully like what we're doing here with this little Bible group, and hopefully you guys are starting up some of your own groups and getting your family more involved. We have the material we need. We really don't need them to interpret everything. We can ask questions, and I think, we can crowdsource the answers on some of these things probably better than the organized church can, because the organized church seems to be driven more by things that are, their own ego and their own value. They put themselves ahead of what the teachings of Christ should have been. And so, it's just something to think about. It's been on my mind, and as I read this stuff, it kind of highlights how much they've been failing us. Like, and maybe this was, this is that prophesized thing that the church, this is the last pope, because this pope is so bad, so corrupt, and he definitely doesn't inspire confidence to want to pay tribute to him. You believe this? Like 1.6 billion Catholics around the world are sending this guy money. I mean, that's how I feel. It's like, how about people take the money that they're willing to tithe and organize it and figure out ways to organize it in their community to go solve these problems once and for all. Like, that's what I think is a much better use, because, there's a great story I'm going to relate to, and then I'll finish up on Matthew 7 here. One of the reasons why government welfare plans never work. Okay. It's a real simple reason. Okay. So everybody's part of a family. And let's just say you had a cousin or a sibling who was, kind of lazy, and they kind of kept bouncing around from jobs, and you're married and have a couple kids or something. And this sibling or cousin comes and says, "Hey, can I stay with you?" And you're like, sure. What's going on? Why do you need to stay with me? Why not? Why are things tough? It's like, well, I can't get a job right now, and I'm looking for a job, and then they come into your house, and you have a few words with your spouse. You gotta be like, how long is this person staying here? I know it's family. All these conversations are had all the time in this country, all over the world, probably. So then they come into your house, and you kind of see why they don't have a job. Sometimes you see, sometimes they're really falling on their luck. And then you're like, wait a second. You don't have a job because you're always late. You're sleeping in, you're drinking too much. You see all these things that they're doing that kind of has contributed to this difficult time. Now, I'm not saying everybody does that, but let's just say half of the people do it. So then the next question is, do you want to subsidize them indefinitely? And most people will say, no, I don't want to subsidize them. So you kind of give them a time frame, and it's like, okay, we got 3 months, 2 months, 6 months, whatever the number of months is. You got to get your shit together and go get a job and go find something, and I'll help you go find a studio or something, and kind of kick them in the ass and say, go, you have to get your footing. I don't mind helping you get your footing, but you have to get your footing. So now the conversation with government says, hey, Bobby, your brother, or your cousin who's got a tough time getting a job and keeping a job. Yeah. We'll take it off your hands. What? Yeah. We'll make sure that, we give him some benefits. We're going to give him a place to live. We'll take care of it. And then you're like, of course, go ahead. You do it. But now if you got sent a bill, an itemized bill for your brother, indefinitely, or your cousin, you might be pretty harping mad. And so there's this separation between, people that are truly down on their luck and deserve help and aid to get back on their feet. And they deserve it because they've been paying in for that security. It's not any different than insurance. If you pay your taxes and you pay money to the government, and then when times are tough and you really need the government to step in and help, you deserve it. And then there's some people that are just born maybe with some deficiencies where they're never going to be able to contribute. And that's okay too. I don't wish that on anybody. But if somebody is truly deficient in terms of being able to work, they just mentally, they can't handle it, or they're physically handicapped, or whatever the case is, they deserve government help too. I'm not talking about those folks. I'm not talking about people that, have something that makes it next to impossible for them to work. I'm talking about the people that can work. They're just too damn lazy to work. Okay. And I think that's what Christianity and the Bible talks about, is we shouldn't tolerate people that are able-bodied from getting a pass indefinitely. You can get a pass, if you're a little depressed or something else, but at the end of the day, you're responsible for your own actions. You're an individual, a free spirit. We're here to help, but we're not here to carry you indefinitely. You have to carry yourself. And anyways, when I think about this, I think about it from this whole concept that he talks, goes into next. You can identify people that are that act like harmless sheep but are vicious wolves. These are some of these people. The people that look for handouts, they're kind of like wolves. They take advantage of our good nature as human beings, and we have to be super careful about that, because this goes into, you can identify them by their fruit and the way they act. Can you pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? There you go, Mindy, the withered fig. A good tree produces fruit, and a bad tree produces bad fruit. A good tree can't produce bad fruit, and a bad tree can't produce good fruit. So every tree that does not produce good fruit is chopped down, thrown into the fire. Now, I'm not saying these people need to get thrown into the fire, but they should be thrown into the street and wake themselves up after they have some real hardship. And maybe you're not the one that has to help pick them up after they've hit rock bottom. Maybe that's somebody else who's just a little more religious than you are, or that I am. And so this is a good analogy. Being thrown into the fire is not literal fire. It might be just thrown into the reality of the situation, that they have to start taking responsibility for themselves. Just as you can identify a tree by its fruit, so you can identify people by their actions. So this is great. I'm a big fan of Matthew, by the way. All of his readings. I actually picked Matthew as my confirmation name. I think I might have mentioned that before, but I know now why I picked Matthew, because I a lot of his readings really resonate with me. Not everybody who calls out to the Lord will enter the kingdom of heaven. Only those who actually do the will of my Father in heaven will enter. On Judgment Day, many will say, Lord, Lord, we prophesied in your name and cast out demons in your name and performed many miracles. But I will reply, I never knew you. Get away from me. You break God's laws. So that's the Jesus I like. I'm not going to kid you. If you read the Torah or you talk to anybody who's Jewish, and I've done both, I studied the Torah in college just to understand the differences between the Bible, like the Bible and Roman Catholicism and Judaism. The Jewish faith is very difficult. You gotta get your shit done. You don't you don't get to ask for forgiveness at the end and you get a pass. Like in Christianity, my understanding has always been you can do all this bad stuff your entire life, but at the very end, right before you die, you have a change of heart and God knows it's sincere. You get to enter, right? In Judaism, it's like you live a bad life the whole time. You don't get a pass on the way out the door. You're done. And that's one of the big differences, whereas the teachings of Judaism are super hardcore and strict. And I got to tell you, I kind of like that element of Judaism is that, it's weighed out. You look at all your good deeds and bad deeds over your lifetime, and you get judged. Hopefully, you do more good. And there's something to be said about some sort of balance of that. And I wish that the Christian faith had just a pinch more of that in it, where you don't keep getting a pass. There you go, Mindy. You're right. Old Testament God. I know, but purgatory, I'm not so sure. I think purgatory exists, but I don't know if that's in the Bible. I kind of hear mixed things about that. But anyways, I do like the Old Testament God, because I think, maybe things wouldn't have gotten this bad in this country if we were living more by Old Testament God, versus the touchy-feely, everybody's perfect with all the mistakes and you never need to learn from any mistakes because everything is just the way it is. And, I don't buy that either. So anyone who listens to my teachings and follows it wise, like a person who builds a house on solid rock. Though the rain comes in torrents and the floodwaters rise and the winds beat against the house, it won't collapse because it is built on bedrock. But anyone who hears my teaching and doesn't obey is foolish, like a person who builds a house on sand. When the rains and floods comes and the winds beat against it, the house will collapse. When Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teachings, and he taught with real authority, unlike the teachings of the religious laws. Yeah, because Jesus obviously did an unbelievable job of making sure that people, made sense of the analogies that he gave. And so, that's the beauty of being the Son of God. You get to really master the art of communication. So that's one of the wonderful things about it. So I'm going to read a little bit more. And I will praise you, Lord, with all my heart. I will tell you marvelous things you have done. I will always be filled because of you. I will sing praises in your name, O Most High. My enemies retreated. They staggered and died when you appeared. For you have judged in my favor. From your throne you have judged with fairness. You have rebuked the nations and destroyed the wicked. You have erased their names forever. The enemy is finished in endless ruins. The cities you uprooted are now forgotten. But the Lord reigns forever, executing judgment from his throne. He will judge the world with justice and rule the nations with fairness. The Lord is a shelter for the oppressed, a refuge in times of trouble. Those who know your name trust in you. For you, O Lord, do not abandon those who search for you. Sing praises to the Lord who reigns in Jerusalem. Tell the world about his unforgettable deeds. For he who avenges murder cases for the helpless, he does not ignore the cries of those who suffer. So, that's the righteous Lord that we all kind of know and feel and sense, that God does work through his Son in teaching us the lessons about what life could truly be like when it's equal justice and, liberty, where we're all free, right? Liberty is just another word for freedom, and justice for all. And that we all crave to be treated equally before the law. nobody should have precedent over another and buy your way out of corruption, um, like so often. And so, that's the real big teaching with all this, is that we need to take these lessons of Christ. We need to think about them, like, how do we make sure that we restore the way we're organized as a society around these teachings? So even for those people that are not religious, these core principles apply to organizing a very solid society. It's very hard to dispute the value of the morality of Christianity. Christianity stands on its own merit based on just what common sense and what people would like to be done for themselves if they were in a similar situation. So with that, I'm done for the evening. So thank you guys so much for joining. I appreciate it. I hope to see you tomorrow. So God bless you. God bless your family and friends. May God continue to bless our great United States of America. And I hope peace is with you. And if you have a difficult time finding that peace, that it does find you. So have a wonderful evening. Thank you for chiming in. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a good night. God bless.